What if I told you your brain has a back door that people are using to control you every single day? Seriously, look at yourself. You think you're an independent thinker, but you're actually a biological puppet. Every time a coworker makes a snide remark, every time your partner uses that specific tone of voice, every time some anonymous jerk on the internet types a comment that gets under your skin, they are reaching into your skull and flipping a switch. They own you. You've handed them the remote control to your nervous system and said, "Here, please, make me miserable." If you don't learn how to lock that back door right now, you are just headed for a bad day. You're doomed to a life where you are a consequence of everyone else's bad mood. You're performing a slow-motion emotional lobotomy on yourself, cutting out your capacity for logic and replacing it with a raw, bleeding nerve. Today, we're changing that. We're going to install a deadbolt on your mind using 5 hardcore Stoic truths that will make you practically untouchable. Most of you are walking around like open wounds. You think being reactive is the same thing as being passionate. It's not. It's just weakness disguised as intensity. When you explode in anger, you aren't showing strength. You're showing exactly where your buttons are located. You're giving the world a roadmap on how to destroy you. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus weren't just some dusty old guys in tunics talking about feelings. They were psychological warriors. They lived through plagues, exiles, and the constant threat of execution, and they stayed calm not because they were robots, but because they understood a fundamental truth. You cannot control the world, but you can absolutely control the gates of your own perception. If you get this wrong, you spend your life as a slave. If you get it right, you become a monolith that the world can crash against without ever moving an inch. Before we dive into the verbal arsenal that's going to fix your life, I want to know who is in the room. If you're watching from the United States, Canada, UK, Australia, or anywhere else in the world, comment on the name of your city below. I want to see where this message is hitting you tonight. I want to see the global footprint of people who are finally tired of being pushed around by their own adrenaline. Let's talk about the first phrase that is going to act as your shield. The average person's response to a disagreement is a desperate need to be right. We have this rightness addiction, where we feel like if we don't convince the other person they're wrong, we've somehow lost. That is a loser's game. Seneca once said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most of your anger is just you fighting a ghost you created in your own head. When someone insults you, they are essentially offering you a gift of garbage. If you don't accept the gift, who is left holding the trash? Exactly. The phrase you need to master is, "I see this differently, but I understand that is your perspective." Now, don't mistake this for being nice. This is a cold, calculated refusal to participate in someone else's circus. When you say this, you are effectively telling the other person that their reality is not your reality, and you feel zero obligation to join them in their burning house. You are acknowledging the noise they are making with their throat without letting it infect your internal state. Think of it like a dog barking at you through a fence. Do you get down on all fours and bark back to prove you're right? Of course not. You just keep walking. Why? Because you're a human and it's a dog. Most people you encounter are acting on pure animal instinct. By using this phrase, you're asserting your humanity and your autonomy. You're saying, "I hear the vibrations you're making in the air, and they have no power here." This is the death of your ego's need for validation. Most people are going to click off this video right now because their ego is already bruised. They'd rather stay angry than get wise. If you're still here, you're the exception. You're the 1% willing to do the internal work. Hit that subscribe button right now, not to do me a favor, but to signal to yourself that you are opting out of the noise and into the masterclass. Don't let this be another video you forget by tomorrow. Anchor yourself to this mindset. The second phrase handles the hijack directly. We live in an age of instant gratification and instant reaction. You get a text and you feel the physical urge to reply within 3 seconds. Someone cuts you off in traffic and your hand moves to the horn before you've even processed the danger. You are being lived by your impulses.
Epictetus, a man who was literally born into slavery and had his leg broken by a cruel master, taught that no one can hurt you unless you consent to it. He said that if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. You are the one who opened the door. You are the one who let the intruder in and gave him a tour of the place. To stop this, you need the voluntary pause. The phrase is, "I'm going to sit with that and get back to you when I've processed it." This phrase is a power move that borders on the divine. It creates a vacuum. People absolutely hate vacuums. They want you to explode because your explosion justifies their own bad behavior. If they yell and you yell back, they can walk away thinking, "See, we're both just passionate." But if they yell and you respond with a calm, steady, "I'll get back to you," they are forced to stand there in silence and face their own reflection. It's like holding up a mirror to a monster. Most of the time, they won't like what they see. You are taking the remote control back. You are telling the world that your response is a premium product and it is currently out of stock. You aren't being passive, you're being a tactical withdrawal. You're moving the battle to a terrain of your choosing, the terrain of logic, rather than staying in the swamp of emotion where they have the home field advantage. If you're still here, it means you're part of the 1% who actually wants to own their mind rather than just renting it out to the highest bidder. Do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button. Most people will click off this video because the truth is too heavy for them. They'd rather stay angry and authentic than be wise and powerful. Don't be that person. Stay in the room. The third concept we have to tackle is the absolute waste of mental energy that defines modern life. Marcus Aurelius sat at the head of the Roman Empire, dealing with Germanic tribes, a failing economy, and a literal plague, and yet he constantly asked himself one question: is this necessary? Most of what you think about is junk. It's mentally processed sugar. You spend hours ruminating on what your ex thinks of you, or why your boss gave someone else the good project, or how the economy is going to ruin you in 5 years. You're stealing from your own future to pay for a past you can't change. You're a thief, and you're robbing yourself. The phrase to stop this cycle is ruminating on this providing a solution, or are we just practicing being miserable? This is a logic bomb. It's witty because it calls out the sheer absurdity of the human condition. We are the only animals that will sit in a perfectly comfortable chair in a perfectly air-conditioned room and visualize ourselves into a panic attack. When you use this phrase, you are grabbing yourself by the collar and shaking yourself awake. You're cutting through the emotional theater and demanding utility. If what you're talking about doesn't move the needle, why are we talking about it? If you aren't providing a solution, you're just part of the noise, and noise is for the weak. Think of it like being on a ship that's taking on water. One guy is screaming at the ocean for being wet. Another guy is writing a long-winded complaint about the shipbuilder. The Stoic is the one grabbing the bucket. Be the person with the bucket. Every time you catch yourself spiraling, ask that question. If there's no solution, there's no reason to think about it. Period.
Now we get to the phrase that makes you bulletproof. This is the one that people will hate you for because they can't use it against you. Most insults only hurt because a small part of you believes they might be true. If I call you a blue-haired space alien, you aren't offended. You might think I'm crazy, but you aren't hurt. Why? Because you know for a fact you aren't a blue-haired space alien. But if someone calls you lazy or incompetent and you get defensive, it's because you haven't done the work to prove to yourself that you aren't. You're looking for them to validate your worth. A Stoic knows who they are, which means they don't need your opinion to fill the gaps. The phrase is, "You might be right." Think about the sheer destructive power of those 4 words. Someone comes at you with a list of your failures, expecting a fight, and you just shrug and say, "You might be right." You've just robbed them of the friction they need to keep their fire going. You've bypassed their entire offensive line. It's a psychological judo move where you use their own momentum to throw them over your shoulder. Epictetus used to tell his students that if someone speaks ill of you, don't try to defend yourself. Instead, say, "He must not know about my other faults, otherwise he wouldn't have mentioned only these."
That is the level of confidence we are aiming for. It's a confidence that doesn't require the world to agree with it. It's the confidence of a mountain that doesn't care if the hikers think it's too steep. By agreeing with a critic, you make yourself untouchable. You are saying, my self-worth is not on the table for discussion, so you can have this win if it makes you feel better. Before we get to the final boss level of Stoic wisdom, the phrase that will literally change the way you see every tragedy in your life, I want to remind you to like this video. It helps the algorithm realize that there are people out there who actually want to hear hard truths instead of the usual just believe in yourself fluff. The final phrase is rooted in the concept of amor fati, the love of fate. This is where we separate the amateurs from the masters. Most people use "it is what it is" as a white flag of surrender. They say it when they've given up, but a Stoic uses it as a battle cry. To a Stoic, "it is what it is" doesn't mean I'm a victim of circumstances. It means I accept the reality of this moment so I can begin to dominate it. If you're fighting reality, you're losing. Reality has a 100% win rate. You can cry about the rain, or you can buy an umbrella. The rain doesn't care about your feelings. The universe is indifferent to your plans. The phrase you need is, "This is exactly what I needed to test my character." This is how you turn trash into gold. This is the alchemy of the mind. Your car breaks down? Good. It's a chance to practice patience and see if you can handle a minor inconvenience without acting like a child. You lose your job? Good. It's a chance to see if your identity was tied to a title or to your actual ability. Someone betrays you? Good. It's a chance to practice forgiveness and to realize you were relying too much on the external world for your happiness anyway. Seneca said, "A person who has never known adversity is as unhappy as a man who has never known a friend." Without resistance, you are weak. You are a muscle that has never lifted a weight. When you say, "This is exactly what I needed," you are asserting dominance over your fate. You are telling the universe that there is nothing it can throw at you that you can't use as fuel. You aren't just surviving the fire, you are becoming the fire. Look, let's be brutally honest for a second. We've spent 20 minutes talking about these phrases, but if you don't actually use them, you've just wasted 20 minutes. You can read every book by Marcus Aurelius. You can quote Seneca until you're blue in the face. But if you still scream at your kids because you had a bad day at work, you aren't a Stoic. You're just a fan of Stoicism. There is a massive difference. One is a lifestyle, the other is a hobby. These phrases are weapons, but a weapon is useless if you don't have the courage to draw it when the enemy is at the gate. And the enemy is always at the gate. The enemy is your own ego, your own sloth, and your own desire to be comfortable. If you do this wrong, if you keep letting your emotions drive the bus, you are doomed to be a passenger in your own life. You'll look back in 20 years and realize you were never actually there. You were just a collection of reactions to things that didn't matter. But if you start locking that back door, if you start using the voluntary pause, the utility test, and the love of fate, you will find a level of peace that most people think is impossible. You will become a monolith. You will be the person that others look to when the world is falling apart because they see that you aren't falling apart with it. You have one life. You can spend it being a consequence, or you can spend it being a cause. You can be the person who gets hijacked, or you can be the person who owns the keys. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations for a global audience. He wrote them for himself in the middle of a war to keep from losing his mind. He was the most powerful man on earth, and he still had to remind himself every single morning to not be a jerk and to not let other people's opinions ruin his day. If he had to do the work, what makes you think you don't? I want you to take one of these phrases, just one, and commit to using it for the next 24 hours. When the hijacked starts, when you feel that heat rising in your chest, I want you to stop. I want you to use the voluntary pause. I want you to say, "I see this differently." I want you to realize that you have the power to choose your response. That choice is the only true freedom you have. Don't throw it away. We just talked about utility, about not wasting energy on things that don't move the needle. Well, here's a practical utility move, like this video. The algorithm is designed to feed you outrage because outrage keeps you scrolling. When you hit like on a video like this, you are forcing the machine to feed you wisdom instead of garbage. You're taking control of your digital environment. If you want more hardcore logic in your feed and less mindless clickbait, tell the algorithm right now. And for those of you who stayed until the very end, I know you're the ones who are actually going to do the work. Don't forget to comment your city below if you haven't already. I'm reading these because I want to see the modern Stoic army growing. I want to know that there are people out there who still value wisdom over noise. You are not a puppet. You are not a victim. You are not doomed, unless you choose to be. So stop choosing it. Lock the back door. Take the remote back. Be silent. Be strong. Be untouchable. The world is going to keep being chaotic. People are going to keep being annoying. The economy is going to keep being unpredictable. That is the nature of the world. Your nature, however, is to be the master of your own soul. Now go out there and act like it.